What's up, guys? Matt Manduke here, and I have for you a rhetorical thought. Today I'm bringing you the differences between old and new cars, because I find a lot of older folks generally think that older cars are better than newer cars because they knew how to work on them, because they were so basic. New cars, they don't know how to work on them because, well, when they pop the hood, the first thing they see is an engine cover that they don't know how to get off. So here's the main differences. Main differences between an old car and a new car is a new car gives you a check engine light. Check engine light's kind of a pain in the butt depending on what it is, but in the case of it being, say, like a sensor of any sort, because it's always a sensor that's either telling you there's something wrong or, you know, the sensor itself is bad. The sensor, at least when it throws the check engine light to tell you there's something wrong, the sensor itself, you know where it's at. You know where the problem is. It tells you exactly what the problem is. So there's no guesswork involved. Now, granted, as cars develop, there's more and more sensors for everything. There's tire pressure sensors and everything. And as far as that's concerned, it's still just telling you where the problem is. And though it might be more particular that, you know which tire is low, at least you know your tire is low and you don't have to guess whether or not, or kick it, or, have to get out and actually put a pressure checker on it. Whereas in the older car, you generally have to guess. If you don't know anything about cars, having to guess is a pain in the ass, and you end up dumping a bunch of money into something that you don't even really know what the problem is. So, in an older car, that's the main difference. Then there's the difference in dependability. A lot of people seem to think that older cars are more dependable for whatever reason. Now, I do believe that in the early 90s, Japanese cars were the most dependable as they were going to get. However, in the 2000s, domestics, American-made, are actually more dependable than they ever were prior. In other words, they last a lot longer. If we're going for the idea of, longevity, I want to make a point of longevity. To me, means no major repairs. You haven't had to replace a motor, you haven't had to rebuild the top end or the bottom end of the motor, you haven't had to replace a transmission or a rear differential. So let's look at cars from the, we'll say, 72 and below, because we started with emissions laws in 73, and through the 70s cars were actually pretty junky once they started with the emissions laws, because let's face it, no car company was really ready to deal with it. And for the most part, in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have a whole lot of imports. So the few that were here, even if they were higher tech, they were still paying a tariff tax, so they were not able to sell at such a rate that they do today. So we'll go back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we look at the way the cars were built. Well, they were a big chunk of steel with a big motor and a transmission. The transmissions were generally heavy duty, and in some cases I actually believe the transmissions from older generations were better than the transmissions of today. However, because the motors were only made to do about 100,000 miles, that became an issue, because it became an issue for today. Because if the motor was only going to last 100,000 miles, nobody was worried about the transmission. So people, felt the need to not change transmission fluid, because, you wouldn't need to change the transmission fluid if you were going to throw the car out after 100,000 miles, or you're going to have to, rebuild the motor or replace the motor or transmission. So many people got the idea that they didn't have to change transmission fluid, or that it never had to be changed. That's not true. It was supposed to be changed every 30,000 miles. Regardless, it was supposed to be changed every 30,000 miles then. It's still supposed to be changed every 30,000 miles now. The way they were a big chunk of steel built, they really weren't made to crush in any sort of way that was safe for anybody. I can link a video that actually points to, I think it's a 56 Bel Air versus a 2008 Chevy Malibu, and you can get an idea who you think is going to walk away, but, I already knew how that was going to go, because one car is actually made with safety in mind, and another car is actually made with none of that in mind. And that was still during an era where if we put a bigger motor in it, it'll go faster, and that's all that they were really worried about, was, going faster. So then, if we look at newer cars, they have airbags. Airbags, a lot of people are like mixed on airbags, but I've been in accidents with and without airbags. Without an airbag was a 91 Toyota Camry. With an airbag was a 2006 Scion XB. I'll tell you what, the airbag did a number for me, because I probably would have been ejected from the vehicle if I didn't have the airbag in 2006. Well, that actually happened in 2008, but the 91 Camry, not having the airbag actually caused some damage to my back that I wouldn't otherwise have, and I will live with that for the rest of my life. Now, in that case, I was actually only wearing a lap belt, which might have had something to do with it. In the XB, I was wearing everything I was supposed to. But then we look at, other things like the advanced braking system. I'm not fully on to like ABS, because I really just don't like the way that I can't lock my brakes up when I want to. But I understand the need for it for some situations, such as slippery surfaces, where you really shouldn't be locking your brakes up, because then you lose all control of your vehicle. If we look at newer vehicles, in the same way as a safety, obviously there's all kinds of safety stuff that weren't in older cars. But if we also look at them in dependability, it's not uncommon to see a car with over 200,000 miles, and I honestly believe that all cars are designed to do at least 300,000 miles, unless they're Chrysler brand. So no Dodge, no Jeep, no Fiat, none of them. They're Ferrari. Anything made by the Lancia Corporation is not designed to do 300,000 miles. You'll be lucky if you get 150,000 miles out of them, because they're made to be pieces of shit. However, if you look at, a Nissan or even a Hyundai or a Kia or a Chevy or a Ford, they're made to do at least 300,000 miles. Most of the pickup trucks, like the Ford F-150 and the Chevy Silverado, they're made to do a lot more. I've seen them with over 500,000 miles without any major repairs, and that includes transmission and rear and motor. So, if we're looking at trucks that are capable of doing, 500,000 miles without a problem, then obviously that is a much more dependable vehicle than, say, in 1957, when you were lucky if the car got to 100,000 miles. So that's just my 2 cents. It's a rhetorical thought. So, if you guys want to comment below, go for it. If, you have your own opinions and your own feelings, go ahead and express them to me. I'd be happy to hear them, and I'd be happy to discuss them with you as well. If you like this, go ahead and like it, and while you're at it, you can subscribe, because I'll always have, a constant inflow of these maybe conspiracy type ideas, but they're all thoughts for you to wash around in your own head. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.